Sawadee-kap. Hello and welcome to Daily Wisdom, Walking the Path with the Buddha. Today is our Pali Canon and English study group, and we're exploring Volume 2 of our book series, which is titled Walking the Path with the Buddha. We're exploring chapters 21 through 30 today, where the way I do this program is I invite students who are in Zoom to be able to volunteer to read a chapter from the book, which is the words of the Buddha. Then I'm going to share some teachings on that, and then I'm going to open up to any and all questions that you guys have. Whether you're in Facebook, YouTube, or Zoom, you can ask questions by putting that into the comment section. I'll be able to see that. And if you're in Zoom, you can electronically raise your hand, unmute your microphone, and ask any and all questions that you like that way. And that's also how you can actually volunteer to read. So I'd like to welcome to all of you guys, whether you're joining for the first time or you've been joining regularly, and invite anybody in Zoom to be able to volunteer to read our chapters. So if you'd like to read, just feel free to raise your hand, and then I'll be able to see you and call on you. It looks like Pat there has volunteered to read the first one. Go ahead, sir.
Seeing non-self with correct wisdom. Monks, form is impermanent. Feeling is impermanent. Perception is impermanent. Volitional formations are impermanent. Consciousness is impermanent. What is impermanent is discontentedness. What is discontentedness is non-self. What is non-self should be seen as it really is with correct wisdom thus. This is not mine. This I am not. This is not myself. When one sees this thus as it really is with correct wisdom, one holds no more views concerning the past. When one holds no more views concerning the past, one holds no more views concerning the future. When one holds no more views concerning the future, one has no more stubborn craving. When one has no more stubborn craving, the mind becomes free from strong feelings towards form, feeling, perception, volitional formations, and consciousness, and is liberated from the taints by non-clinging. By being liberated, the mind is steady. By being steady, the mind is content. By being content, one is not agitated. Being unagitated, one personally attains nibbana. One understands, destroyed is birth, the holy life has been lived. What had to be done has been done. There is no more for the state of existence. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, sir. So I know many of you guys have studied with me already in the foundational classes and courses and programs and different things like this, where I've taught the universal truth of non-self as the solution to eliminating the very first fetter or the very first pollution of mind, which is personal existence view. So the Buddha helps you to be able to see that none of these things are actually you, and that there is no self. And when I teach in the foundational programs, I explain to you about this self-image, that the mind can cling to this self-image, wanting to be perceived by others in a certain way, and clinging to that is who you think you are. And we talk about the mind as well, how the mind clings to a certain self-identity. And that's true. Those things are all true. But there's other things that the mind can actually cling to, of thinking of this as who you are. And I wait until we get into a program like this, where students have already explored some of those beginning teachings, and we kind of, just like the Buddha, kind of layer teachings, layer by layer by layer. So what I've taught before as the universal truth of non-self is I've taught about how the mind clings to the physical body in the self-image, thinking that that's who you are, and how it clings to the mind or the self-identity. That's the consciousness. So out of these five aggregates, what I've been describing to you is how the mind clings to this form in this mind, or this self-image or this self-identity. And it's clinging to these things, wanting them to be permanent, while in reality, they are actually impermanent. So you probably are familiar with that, how the mind can cling to your physical appearance or your culture, your ethnicity, your sexual orientation, nationality, or job or occupation as part of your identity, or any number of other things. But the mind can also form this perception that there is a self here by clinging to your feelings, to your perceptions, or your volitional formations, which are your choices and decisions. So the feelings are things like someone might say, I am angry. Or maybe someone says, I am shy. I am a shy person. This isn't actually really true. This is the mind clinging to a feeling, thinking that this is who you are as a person. And that feeling is actually impermanent. So the Buddha is helping you to be able to see that that feeling of shyness is not you. It's not who you are. That feeling of anger is not you. or even those happy feelings that you experience in the unenlightened state, which are conditioned happy feelings. Those are not you. It's not who you are. So when we say, I am happy, or I am angry, or I am shy, that's actually not speaking true reality, because I am not angry or I am not shy. True reality is that the mind is experiencing anger, or the mind is experiencing shyness. And it's helpful to be able to see these as two separate things, because the unenlightened mind is almost like a child, like a 3-year-old child throwing a temper tantrum. So there's this physical body, and then there's this mind, and the combination of these two things is the person. And the person is looking at the mind and is like, come on, girl, come on, guy, like, you got to get with the program here. We need to get to peacefulness. We need to get to joy. And the mind's like, I'm not doing that. And the person's like, yeah, but you're not going to sit around and do this all day. You can't be angry and frustrated all day and all the rest of this life. We're going to get you some help here. And the mind's like, no, I'm not doing that. So it's really helpful for the person to look at the mind and just kind of like kick it in the butt, so to speak, and say, come on, let's go. So if the mind is clinging to any of these feelings, thinking that this is who you are, now the mind is identifying through that and might say, oh, I am shy. So in any situation where you could actually break through that shyness and put the mind in a situation where it could gain the help that it needs, where like maybe in a situation like this, where maybe someone's shy to read, and that's the personal existence view that's doing that. Whereas if you put your mind in that situation where you do maybe read or do public speaking or other things like this, your mind will be able to overcome that shyness. Where if you just cling to that shyness as who you think you are, you'll never actually break through, and you'll just feel that uncomfortableness your whole life. So the Buddha is teaching you that these feelings are not you. It's not who you are. So whether you say these things or not, it's up to you. But at least if you think in this way, that you don't think that I am angry or I am shy, but instead think the mind is experiencing anger. The mind is experiencing shyness. The mind is experiencing excitement, right? This is helping you to be able to realize non-self and disassociate with this I. And now the mind can understand that these feelings are impermanent. The same thing with the perceptions. Your perceptions are your views and opinions about the world, how you think about the world. And an individual can cling to these as who you think you are too. A common example of this might be someone's political views. If you have certain political views or opinions, you might cling to those as who you think you are. Like using the American political system of I am a Democrat, or I am a Republican, or I am a conservative, I am a progressive, I am a liberal. This is the mind taking a perception that you have about the world and adopting that as your identity of who you think you are. And now in that situation, someone can fight and argue, and maybe even almost it appears to be fighting until death in order to, defend your views and opinions about the world. And that's not, though, it's going to lead to your peace and joy in this lifetime. It's not going to lead to enlightenment. So you need to understand that your perceptions are impermanent. They're constantly changing, and don't identify with those as who you are. You will have views and opinions, but not interested in adopting that in your mind as who you think you are. And there's any number of things that you could adopt in your mind in terms of your perceptions of the world, of who you think you might be. And the same thing happens with choices and decisions. An individual can cling to this as who you think you are. And a great example for this is if we've used drugs and alcohol in the past, we might have been taught that I am an alcoholic or I am an addict, where this isn't actually true. True reality is that this being used to choose to use drugs and alcohol in the past, but we don't need to define who we are today based on choices and decisions that we've made, because these choices and decisions are impermanent. And the mind clinging to any of those choices and decisions as who you think you are, it's just causing your mind to experience discontentedness when you're in certain situations. So the Buddha here is just starting off this discourse, helping to make sure his students understand that, hey, all these aggregates, they are impermanent. Form, feeling, perception, volitional formations, and the consciousness, these things are all impermanent. What is impermanent is going to lead to discontentedness. That's what he's saying, because the mind craves permanence. So what is impermanent is discontentedness. Whatever is impermanent, the mind clinging to it craving that permanence is going to lead to discontentedness. What is discontentedness is non-self. So that anger, that frustration, all those discontent feelings, that shaking up of the mind, that's not you. That's not who you are. What is non-self should be seen as it really is with correct wisdom. Thus, this is not mine. This I am not. This is not myself. So what the Buddha is saying is none of these things are you. Even though you have all these five aggregates, there is physical body, there are feelings, there are perceptions, there are choices and decisions, and there is a consciousness or a mind. None of that is you. And the mind needs to be able to peer through that and be able to see that more and more clearly. When one sees this thus as it really is with correct wisdom, one holds no more views concerning the past, right? So if you hold on to this idea that I am an alcoholic from decisions you made in the past, you're clinging to those. And now, if you see with correct wisdom that those things aren't you, you are no longer holding views concerning the past. Your mind is in the present moment. Now, when one holds no more views concerning the past, you hold no more views concerning the future, right? You'll still think about the past, you'll still think about the future as you progress on this path and even as an enlightened being, but you don't cling to any of that as who you think you are as a person. Because if you cling to any of these kinds of things, that's where the mind gets discontent. Well, let's just say in the present moment, you're thinking about the future, and maybe you need to do some kind of public speaking, or you need to present some idea to your boss, and you've got 2 weeks to prepare for it. Well, now you can be all worried about that in the future, where you're not interested in having stress and anxiety. So you just keep your mind in the present moment and not worry about the future. And getting to the point where you've realized non-self will help you to do that. Whereas if you're worried about how your boss is going to perceive you, that's your personal existence view. So you'd like to get rid of the clinging to these five aggregates so that you don't have that stress and anxiety about how people are going to perceive you in the future. And then when one holds no more views concerning the future, one has no more stubborn cravings. That's what you're working to eliminate, that longing, yearning, that chasing after the objects of your affection. When one holds no more stubborn cravings, the mind becomes free from strong feelings towards the five aggregates of form, feelings, perceptions, choices and decisions, and consciousness. And when one has no more stubborn craving and is liberated from the taints by non-clinging, right? So now the mind is liberated, it's free. And now the Buddha goes into a short little description of enlightenment. And this is helpful for you because you're going to encounter people from time to time, or you might even read books where authors and monks will tell you that enlightenment is undescribable. And that's true for someone who's not experiencing enlightenment, that it's undescribable. But you'll even hear people go as far as saying that the Buddha never described what enlightenment is. But you can see that that's untrue because right here he's explaining it. He's saying by being liberated, where the mind's free, the mind is steady, right? The mind's steady, it's stable, it's unshakable. By being steady, the mind is content because the unenlightened mind is not content. The grass is always greener on the other side. It always wants what it doesn't have. It can't be content in the present moment. So the mind in the unenlightened state is going to be discontent, but the mind in the enlightened state is going to be content. By being content, one is not agitated, right? So there's not even the slightest little bit of agitation in the enlightened mind, that's been completely eliminated. By being unagitated, one personally attains nibbana, right? So you get to the point where you're completely peaceful and joyful, no matter what's happening. And now, when one understands that their mind is enlightened, they will understand destroyed is birth, because they would have independently verified the cycle of rebirth, starting with potentially dependent origination, being able to see those 12 interlinking steps that we're going to be studying in volume 5 by the time we get there. This is the highest, most ultimate truth of the Buddha, where you can see all the causes and conditions that are leading to rebirth. So by the time you get to enlightenment, you've dismantled dependent origination, and you know that because your mind will be peaceful and joyful. You'll be experiencing the steadiness, the contentedness, the non-agitation for 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, and you'll know that you've dismantled dependent origination and there's not going to be any future birth, that you've lived this holy life, that you're currently living that holy life, and that what had to be done has been done. meaning you've done the training. You've done what you've needed to do. You've cultivated the wisdom of this world. So therefore, you don't need to keep coming back into this world over and over and over again. There is no more for this state of existence. So this is a teaching where the Buddha is going into detail on the universal truth of non-self. And while we're talking about things that you'll hear from other people, is you'll actually hear some people tell you that the Buddha never taught that there is no self. You'll hear people that'll say that too. But you need to know the truth by seeing what he actually taught here and then independently verify it for yourself. This is the Pali Canon, the reference back to the Pali Canon, so you can know that this came from the original words of the Buddha. So this is a teaching to help you go beyond just understanding the universal truth of non-self. Is not only just teaching you to not cling to your self-image and your self-identity, but also feelings, perceptions, and your volitional formations, your choices and decisions as well. Because the mind can adopt this idea of a self through any of those 5 aggregates. So let me know what questions you guys have here. You can put that into Facebook, YouTube, or Zoom, or you can raise your hand in Zoom and ask any questions that you like. All right, I don't see any questions anywhere. So I'm going to move to the next chapter. Is there someone who would like to read chapter 22? Okay, Samantha, go ahead, ma'am.
One who is engaged is unliberated. One who is disengaged is liberated. Monks, one who is engaged is unliberated. One who is disengaged is liberated. Consciousness monks, while standing, might stand engaged with form. Based upon form, established upon form, with the sprinkling of excitement, it might come to growth, increase, and expansion. Or consciousness, while standing, might stand engaged with feeling. Based upon feeling, established upon feeling, with the sprinkling of excitement, it might come to growth, increase, and expansion. Or consciousness, while standing, might stand engaged with perception. Based upon perception, established upon perception, with a sprinkling of excitement, it might come to growth, increase, and expansion. Or consciousness, while standing, might stand engaged with volitional formations. Based upon volitional formations, established upon volitional formations, with a sprinkling of excitement, it might come to growth, increase, and expansion. Monks, though someone might say, separated from form, separated from feeling, separated from perception, separated from volitional formations, I will make known the coming and going of consciousness, its passing away and rebirth, its growth, increase, and expansion is impossible. Monks, if a monk has abandoned desire for the form aggregate, with the abandoning of craving the basis is cut off, there is no support for the establishing of consciousness. If he has abandoned desire for the feeling aggregate, for the perception aggregate, for the volitional formations aggregate, for the consciousness aggregate, with the abandoning of craving, the basis is cut off. There is no support for the establishing of consciousness. When that consciousness is unestablished, not coming to growth, non-generative, the mind is liberated. By being liberated, the mind is steady. By being steady, the mind is content. By being content, one is not agitated. Being unagitated, one personally attains nibbana. One understands destroyed is birth. The holy life has been lived. What had to be done has been done. There is no more for this state of existence.
Okay, thank you, ma'am. So when you're reading this chapter, what I encourage you to do is think about this word engaged as clinging, and think about this word disengaged as non-clinging, because this is just the same thing that the Buddha would teach in regards to that, but using different words, using different vocabulary. So one who is engaged is unliberated, or another way to say that is one who is clinging or craving is unliberated, right? Because the mind's holding on, it's craving, it's clinging, it's unliberated, it's not free. One who is disengaged is liberated, or one who is practicing non-clinging or non-craving is liberated, their mind's free. So if you read through this with that understanding, it will help to bring your mind to the understanding that the Buddha is helping you to be able to see, is that the mind, once again, he's talking about craving and clinging to these 5 aggregates. He's talking about craving and clinging to form, feeling. Here he's got perception, he's got volitional formations, and then he's got probably consciousness he's talking about in general already, right? So he's helping you to be able to see that someone might actually be engaged or disengaged with these things, right? But if they're engaged, then that means that they're craving and clinging. And that's where he gets down here. He says, okay, suppose someone might say, separated from form, feeling, perception, volitional formations, or consciousness, they're going to make known the passing away, rebirth, growth, increase, and expansion. It's impossible. What he's saying is it's impossible for you to know the cycle of rebirth and how beings are coming in and out of this world as long as the mind is craving and clinging. If you're just separated from the 5 aggregates, it's impossible for you to see the truth. What he's teaching you is to abandon the desire, because part of the path in terms of eliminating craving and clinging is, yes, to separate yourself from the object that it's craving and clinging. You'll see this, that the Buddha teaches this, but ultimately the mind has to let go. It's not the physical object itself that is the craving and clinging. It's the way that the mind's holding on to it within the mind. So just separating yourself from the object isn't actually going to release the mind to be able to eliminate craving and clinging. So just separated from something, the mind is still actually engaged. The mind is still craving, is still clinging. It's not until you separate the mind from the object for an extended period of time that it then has the ability to let go. So ultimately what the Buddha is saying is, if a monk abandons desire, that's where you'll actually be able to understand the coming and going of beings, and you'll be able to understand how beings come in and out of the world. So that's what he's talking about here. And then ultimately he gets to the point where he's saying, having gotten to this point where you've abandoned craving, clinging, desire, longing, yearning, and clinging to these aggregates, where you've abandoned the craving and the basis is cut off, then you'll understand that there's no support for the establishing of consciousness, that consciousness can't continue. And when that consciousness is unestablished, then there's no more future lives. And in this situation, having come to that understanding, you can see that for yourself, because you'll know that you've dismantled dependent origination. The way that you independently verify dependent origination, along with being able to independently verify each individual step and how each individual step is experienced within this life, when you dismantle dependent origination and you see that your mind is liberated and it is peaceful, that you have cultivated wisdom, you have eliminated your cravings, desires, attachments, and you now are no longer experiencing discontentedness, that's how you'll know what the coming and going of consciousness is, that it's all based in ignorance. For those of you guys that have studied dependent origination, that you'll have independently verified that. And that's where the mind will then be liberated. And he goes through his example of and description of enlightenment again. So let me know if you guys have questions on this chapter. Okay, Vibhav, go ahead, sir.
Thank you, Teacher David. What does separation really mean here when you're saying separated from form? Like, how does someone separate themselves?
This is where, if you think about a physical object, it's better to think about that. Like if you separate yourself from your mobile phone, like you've heard probably the example of me leaving at home and going outside, right? That is separating from physical object or a physical form. You're distancing yourself from the object. That's what you need to do as a first step to training your mind to eliminate certain cravings where you get pleasant feelings from them. You need to separate yourself from them. So separating yourself from the physical form is to realize that this physical form, this body, is not you. That's you kind of starting to distance yourself from associating with this physical body as who you think you are. And then the same thing for each one of these other things.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay. I don't see any other questions anywhere. So let's move to the next chapter, which is chapter 23. And I saw Judy had raised her hand. There we go. Go ahead, Judy.
Right and wrong refuge. They go to many a refuge, to mountains and forests, to parks and free tree shrines, people threatened with danger. That's not the secure refuge, not the supreme refuge. That's not the refuge having gone to which you gain release from all discontentedness and stress. But when, having gone to the Buddha, the teachings, and the community for refuge, you see the right wisdom, the Four Noble Truths, stress, the cause of stress, the transcending of stress, and the Noble Eightfold Path, the way to stilling of stress. That's the source refuge, that, the supreme refuge, that is the refuge having gone to which you gain release from all discontentedness and stress.
Okay, perfect. Thank you, Judy. So here, the Buddha is talking about this right and wrong refuge, because when people are having difficulties and they're having stress and anxiety and difficulties at work, sometimes they think the way to escape that is to go to the mountains. Maybe just let me go get a cabin in the woods somewhere. Let me just go to a mountain where there's no people and I can just be in nature, and let me just go to this cabin, right? And someone might think that's the way to be able to eliminate their stress and anxiety, because what refuge is protection, right? So people might try to go for refuge or protection to the mountains and the forest, to parks and tree shrines. When people are threatened with danger, they're trying to find this protection, right? The Buddha is talking about it in terms of, you'll see in other discourses where he's talking about when thieves come to town, and when there's famine and when there's calamity in the town, people run away to the forest for refuge. But he's saying that's not the secure refuge. That's not going to keep you protected. The reason why is because if you try to escape to that cabin in the mountains to escape your stress and anxiety, well, guess what? Your mind's going to follow you, right? Sometimes when people think it's the outside world that's causing these discontent feelings, like maybe you think it's your boss or your workplace or your environment or any of these other things, people might think, okay, well, if I just get away from those things, then maybe I will eliminate my stress. But that's not true, because your mind follows you. This is why when you go on vacation, it usually takes you 2, 3, 4, 5 days to calm down from all the stress you've been under before your mind actually starts to maybe enjoy your vacation, right? Because your mind's starting to get further and further away from its attachments on the vacation. That's why that's actually occurring. But oftentimes people think that it's the boss or the workplace and all these things that is causing the stress. So going away to the mountains seems like a ideal solution. But the Buddha is saying that's not the secure refuge, because your mind's following you. That's not the supreme refuge. That's not the refuge having gone to which you will gain release from all discontentedness and stress, right? You might enjoy your time at the cabin. Sure, go to the cabin if that's what you like to do, but that's not going to eliminate your discontentedness and stress, because it's being caused by the craving, desire, attachment within one's own mind. But having gone to the Buddha, the teachings, and the community for refuge, you will see with right wisdom the Four Noble Truths, right? That's where you understand, the stress is being caused by my own cravings, desires, attachments. It's the longing, yearning. It's the mind itself that's causing this stuff. Because that's where you'll see the Four Noble Truths. You'll see what is the problem, the cause of that problem, the elimination of it, in the path forward, which is the Eightfold Path. And now, having seen that clearly, now that's the secure refuge, because you'll know what the real problem is. You'll know what the real cause of that problem is, the elimination of it in the path forward. That's the supreme refuge. That's the refuge having gone to which you will gain release from all discontentedness and stress. So that's why the Buddha talks about going to the Buddha, meaning having confidence in him, having refuge or going to refuge to the teachings, meaning you have access to the teachings, and then being part of a community, because you'll learn from your teacher, but you need to be able to be amongst a community of other practitioners who are choosing to practice these teachings, because you'll learn things from them too, without them even realizing. You'll just kind of observe how people do things, and you'll kind of adopt some of their way of doing things within your own practice. And that's what's going to help you to be able to get you to enlightenment. This is called the triple gem or the triple jewel: the Buddha, the teachings, and the community. These are the three things that you need. If you just had one or two of these things, you actually wouldn't be able to get to enlightenment. You're going to need confidence in the Buddha, and that builds over time. You're going to need access to his teachings, and you're going to need to be part of a community. If you just had confidence in the Buddha, but you didn't have access to his teachings and you weren't part of a community, you wouldn't be able to get to enlightenment. Or if you just had access to the teachings, but you didn't have confidence in the Buddha and you weren't part of a community, you wouldn't get to enlightenment. Or if you were just part of a community and you didn't have confidence in the Buddha and you didn't have access to his teachings, you wouldn't be able to get to enlightenment. So you need all three of these things. And oftentimes people don't have confidence in the Buddha when they first come to the path, and that's okay. But as long as you have access to the teachings and you're part of a community, now over time, as you see improvement to the condition of the mind in your life, you will build confidence in the Buddha because you'll see that his teachings are working. So that's the true refuge. That's the secure refuge. Also, I'd like to point out for you in this discourse that here you can see that the Buddha talks about learning with him and learning his teachings, having gone to the Buddha, the teachings, the community, you will gain release from all discontentedness in stress, meaning you will eliminate all discontentedness, right? It's important for you to know this because you'll see some people in the world that will tell you that enlightened beings still experience anger, sadness, frustration, irritation, annoyance, guilt, shame, fear, stress, anxiety, loneliness, boredom, shyness, resentment, jealousy. You can know that that's not true. And you can see that not just here in this discourse, but other discourses too from the Buddha. You can see that he talks about it's completely eliminated from the mind. So oftentimes people aren't studying with the original teachings of the Buddha. So you can see here in his own words that that's not the case, that it is the case that an individual who's gotten to enlightenment will have eliminated all discontentedness. You can also understand that, whereas if you know of an individual who's having anger and sadness and frustration and stress and anxiety, you can just know for yourself that they're not enlightened yet and that your mind is not enlightened yet when you're experiencing these kinds of things. So this is helpful for you to be able to study with the original words of the Buddha to be able to see this. So let me know what questions you guys have here. You can put that into Facebook, YouTube, or Zoom, or you can raise your hand in Zoom and ask any questions that you like. Judy, I see your hand still up. Is that from volunteering to read, or do you have a question?
That's a mistake.
Okay, no worries.
Sorry.
Yeah, no worries. Okay, I don't see any questions. So let's go to the next one, which is chapter 24. And it looks like Leo and Kristen is volunteering. So we'll just go with the first one, which is Leo, and then Kristen will come to you next.
Thank you. A monk who is concentrated understands things as they really are. Monks develop concentration. A monk who is concentrated understands things as they really are. And what does he understand as it really is? He understands as it really is. This is discontentedness. He understands as it really is. This is the cause of discontentedness. He understands as it really is. This is the elimination of discontentedness. He understands as it really is. This is the way leading to the elimination of discontentedness. Monks develop concentration. A monk who is concentrated understands things as they really are. Therefore, monks, an effort should be made to understand. This is discontentedness. An effort should be made to understand. This is the cause of discontentedness. An effort should be made to understand. This is the elimination of discontentedness. An effort should be made to understand. This is the way leading to the elimination of discontentedness. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, sir. So for those of you guys that have studied the Eightfold Path in the teachings of the Buddha, you know that he teaches concentration, because concentration is what's going to actually help you to access your wisdom and make wise decisions to produce wholesome results. Because in order to get to enlightenment, you're going to need to get to the point where you're making wise decisions 100% of the time for an elongated period of time. So you're gradually bringing your practice up on the Eightfold Path. And then as you're practicing the Eightfold Path perfectly, you need to actually do that for an extended period of time. And it's a big challenge to get your practice up to the point where you're practicing the Eightfold Path flawlessly. And then living your life that way for an extended period of time is actually pretty straightforward because you're doing it almost effortlessly, right? But then as you get to enlightenment, yes, you'll be practicing the Eightfold Path effortlessly. But it takes time to get your practice up and running. So that's why you're practicing to develop concentration. When your mind is uncalm, you won't have mindfulness or awareness of mind. When you don't have mindfulness, you won't have concentration. You'll have a shaken up mind, unsteady, or the Buddha describes it as a muddled mind. And then you will not be able to access your wisdom, which means you will make unwise decisions and it's going to produce unwholesome results. If you got a phone call that your mom was in the back of an ambulance being rushed to the hospital, she's been in a terrible car accident. If your mind is all shaken up and calm, you're not going to have awareness of mind, you're not going to have concentration, and now you're not going to be able to access your wisdom. You might grab your car keys, bolt out the door, rush across town, and end up in a car accident yourself. Rather than, if you actually practice the teachings of the Buddha closely, getting that pollution out of the mind where you can have concentration, now where your mind is concentrated, you'll have calmness, right? There's going to be calmness in the mind because you've gotten rid of those pollutions. There'll be calmness or equanimity. There'll be tranquility in the mind, even in that difficult situation where your mom has been in a terrible car accident. Then you'll have mindfulness or awareness of mind. Then you will have concentration where there's focus and clarity in the mind. And you'll be able to access your wisdom where you'll be able to make wise decisions. You'll know, like, okay, hold on a second. She's in the back of an ambulance. That's the best place for her to be. Let me just calmly make my way over to the hospital because she's getting ready to arrive to doctors and nurses and sophisticated equipment. I would like to go to the hospital and talk to these people so that I can find out what's going on and start making decisions to help her, right? So that's what you would like to be able to do. But you can't do that if your mind's all shaken up. So the Buddha teaches you to develop concentration because that's the doorway into your wisdom and be able to make 100% wise decisions all the time. That's what's going to produce wholesome karma. You need to get to the point where you're extinguishing all your unwholesome karma, making only wise decisions and producing wholesome karma. So the very beginning of that is that you understand the Four Noble Truths. That's how you actually get to concentration. That's the first step towards concentration, is you need to understand what's causing the lack of concentration. What's causing the lack of concentration is craving, desire, attachment. This is why if you've been diagnosed with ADHD or ADD or any of these other things, you can completely transform all of that. It's just that the mind is untrained. So you need to be able to see what's producing the lack of concentration so that now, through understanding the Four Noble Truths, you know what to target in order to then be able to produce the concentration, which then allows you to make wise decisions. So it's craving, desire, attachment, the longing, the yearning that is causing the discontentedness. And that's what causes the mind to be shaken up. So the Buddha, you're going to see many, many times pointing to the Four Noble Truths because that's the very beginning of the path to enlightenment. You're going to see a discourse where the Buddha actually says that each one of his brand new students, he starts them with right view or the Four Noble Truths. That's the best place to start. And that's why he keeps pointing to the Four Noble Truths over and over and over again. So let me know what questions you guys have here on chapter 24. Okay, I don't see any questions. So now we'll go to Kristen for this next chapter 25. All right, go ahead, ma'am.
Thank you, teacher. Gradual progress in these teachings and discipline. It is possible, Brahman, to describe gradual training, gradual practice, and gradual progress in these teachings and discipline. Just as Brahman, when a clever horse trainer obtains a fine thoroughbred colt, he first makes him get used to wearing the bit, and afterwards trains him further. So when the Tathagata obtains a person to be tamed, he first guides him thus. Come, monk, be virtuous, practice moral conduct, restrained with the restraint of the guidelines of these teachings, be perfect in conduct and determination, and seeing misery in the slightest fault, trained by understanding the training precepts. When Brahman, the monk, is virtuous, practicing moral conduct and seeing misery in the slightest fault, trains by undertaking and training precepts, then the Tathagata guides him further. Come, monk, guard the doors of your sense spaces. On seeing a form with the eye, not grasping as its signs and features, since you were to leave the eye unguarded, evil, unwholesome states of craving and displeasure might invade you. Practice a way of its restraint. Guard the eye sense base. Undertake the restraint of the eye sense base. On hearing a sound with the ear, on smelling an odor with the nose, on tasting a flavor with the tongue, on touching a physical object with the body, on recognizing a mental object with the mind, are explained in the same repetitive formulas. When Brahman, the monk, guards the doors of his sense bases, then the Tathagata guides him further. Come, monk, be moderate in eating, reflecting wisely. You should take food neither for amusement, nor for intoxication, nor for the sake of physical beauty and attractiveness, but only for the endurance and continuance of this body, for ending discomfort, and for assisting the holy life, considering, thus, I shall terminate old feelings without entertaining new feelings, and I shall be healthy and blameless and shall live in comfort. When Brahman, the monk, is moderate in eating, then the Tathagata guides him further. Come, monk, be devoted to wakefulness. During the day, while walking back and forth and sitting, purify your mind of obstructive states. In the first watch of the night, while walking back and forth and sitting, purify your mind of obstructive states. In the middle watch of the night, you should lie down on the right side of the lion's pose, with one foot overlapping the other, mindful and fully aware. After noting in your mind the time for rising, after rising in the third watch of the night, while walking back and forth and sitting, purify your mind of obstructive states. When Brahman, the monk, is devoted to wakefulness, then the Tathagata guides him further. Come, monk, be possessed of mindfulness and full awareness. Act in full awareness when going forward and returning. Act in full awareness when looking ahead and looking away. Act in full awareness when flexing and extending your limbs. Act in full awareness when wearing your robes and carrying your outer robe and bowl. Act in full awareness when eating, drinking, consuming food, and tasting. Act in full awareness when defecating and urinating. Act in full awareness when walking, standing, sitting, falling asleep, waking up, talking, and keeping silent. When Brahman, the monk, possesses mindfulness and full awareness, then the Tathagata guides him further. Come, monk, make use of the secluded resting place, the forest, the root of the tree, a mountain, a ravine, a hillside cave, a charnel ground, a jungle thicket, an open space, a heap of straw. He makes use of the secluded resting place, the forest, the root of a tree, a mountain, a ravine, a hillside cave, a charnel ground, a jungle thicket, an open space, a heap of straw. On returning from his alms round, gathering food, after his meal, and he sits down, folding his legs crosswise, setting his body erect, and establishing mindfulness before him. Abandoning sensual desire for the world, he resides with a mind free from the sensual desires. He purifies his mind from sensual desires. Abandoning ill will and hatred, he resides with mind free from ill will, compassionate for the welfare of all living beings. He purifies his mind from ill will and hatred. Abandoning complacency, he resides free from complacency, deeply understand of the light, mindful and fully aware. He purifies his mind from complacency. Abandoning restlessness and worry, he resides unagitated with a mind inwardly peaceful. He purifies his mind from the restlessness and worry. Abandoning doubt, he resides having gone beyond doubt, unconfused about the wholesome states, with confidence. He purifies his mind from doubt. Having thus abandoned these 5 hindrances, imperfections of the mind that weaken wisdom, quiet distance from the sense desires, distant from the unwholesome mental states, enters and resides in the first jhana, which is with thinking and pondering. based in seclusion, filled with excitement and joy. And with the subsiding of thinking and pondering, by gaining tranquility and oneness of mind, he enters and resides in the second jhana, which is without thinking and pondering, based in concentration, filled with excitement and joy. And with the fading away of excitement, remaining imperturbable, unable to upset or excited, calm, serene, mindful and clearly aware, he experiences in himself the joy of which the noble ones say, peaceful is he who resides with equanimity and mindfulness. He enters the third jhana, and having given up pleasure and pain, and with the fading away of former gladness and sadness, he enters and resides in the fourth jhana, which is beyond pleasure and pain, and purified by equanimity and mindfulness. This is my instruction, Brahmin, to those monks who are in the higher training, whose minds have not yet attained the goal, who reside aspiring to the supreme security from bondage, enlightenment. From these things, conduce both to the peaceful residing here and now, and to the mindfulness and full awareness of those monks who are arhants, with taints destroyed, who have lived the holy life, done what had to be done, laid down the burden, reached the true goal, destroyed the fetters of existence, and are completely liberated through final knowledge, wisdom. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, ma'am. So this is a pretty detailed discourse that I can walk you guys through, but I'm not going to be able to teach you everything in today's class just because of the amount of time that we have. That's why I encourage you guys to read these chapters before class or after class, because you have the words of the Buddha here, and then you have a reference that takes you back to be able to see what this came from in the original Pali Canon, and you can see what the Buddha was talking about before or after this. But then you have words from me that are actually thoroughly walking you through each individual discourse, and that's what I'm doing in the books. And I'm able to do that because I was able to, sit down and write and be able to spend all the time I needed to be able to explain each individual aspect of the discourse. But in a class like this, I only have the ability to really touch on a few things. So if all you're able to do is come to the class and learn in the class, great, that's wonderful. Come to class and learn in the class. But if you're able to make some time in your life to be able to read these books before or after class, this is going to really help you glean the most insight and the most benefit from this type of program, because you'll be able to go through this thoroughly and maybe even read it multiple times. Each day, you might decide to read just one chapter, or at the most 2 chapters, right? Some days you probably need to read 2 because it's 7 days and there's 10 chapters. You might need to read 2 chapters in a day, but that can be done very slowly, right? And maybe you take 10, 15, 20 minutes and you just sit with those 1 or 2 chapters a day, and you just really think about that, being introspective and really looking at the words of the Buddha to independently verify them. And that's what you would really like to do in a program like this, rather than just try to rush through it and just read little by little, just 10, 15, maybe 20 minutes a day. That's really all you need. So you can do that with these books, either downloading them online, take it and go print it, get printed versions at the temple, or order it on Amazon. So I'm going to walk through this just a little bit, and then I'm just mainly going to open up the questions. That's what our time is for you guys to get help with any questions that you have. So here, a Brahmin, which is a Hindu priest, would have asked the Buddha a question. And then the Buddha is saying, okay, it's possible, Brahmin, to describe gradual training, gradual practice, and gradual progress in these teachings and discipline. So this Brahmin must have asked him, can you describe what it means to have gradual training, gradual practice, and gradual progress? Because this isn't something they would understand, because a Brahmin is just doing rites, rituals, ceremonies, worship, prayers, and things like this, and they're getting a fee for those. But the Buddha is teaching to completely transform the mind. So the Buddha's like, yeah, I can describe that for you. And he relates it to a training of a horse, because this is something that people would have understood. Farm life is something that they would have understood. So he talks about how to gradually train a horse. If you've ever done any horse training, or maybe even you've trained other animals before, you know how it's very gradual that you're training that animal. And the same thing is true when you're training a human being. And that's what a Buddha is they're actually training human beings to become better and better human beings, much like a horse trainer is training a horse to become a better and better horse, perhaps, if that's the way somebody looks at it. right? So the Buddha is saying, okay, I train this person in moral conduct, right? Helping this person to understand, to improve moral conduct. You'll see in his teachings where he says that he teaches the Four Noble Truths first, and then after he teaches the Four Noble Truths, he teaches them the moral conduct. But here he's just saying, okay, I teach them the moral conduct. Because if you think about a oil pipe that is busted and spewing oil all over the world, you're not going to go clean up the mess on the floor first. The mess on the floor is your old unwholesome karma. Instead, you're going to shut down any new production of any oil that's being spewed all over the world. So you're going to shut down the production of any new unwholesome karma. So by shutting down your unwise moral conduct, that's shutting down your unwholesome production of unwholesome karma. So that's why the Buddha says, okay, I'm training them in moral conduct, because that's less for them to be able to have to deal with as they're cleaning up their practice. And he goes through and he says the next thing he does is teaches them to guard their doorways of the sense spaces, because all the discontentedness that you experience is happening inside the mind, but it's because the mind is experiencing contact through the sense spaces, and now it's triggering one of your cravings, desires, attachments. The doorways in the sense spaces are the eyes, the ears, the nose, the tongue, the body, and then the mind itself. So when we talk about craving, desire, attachment, that's what you've heard in the foundational programs. But what that really is sensual desire inside the mind. And the mind is now coming in contact with objects through the sense spaces. We're going to go into this in more detail when we get to that. There's an entire book based on the 6 sense spaces. It's volume 9 of the book series. But just for now, understand that the mind can have this contact through the eyes, ears, nose, tongue, the body, and the mind, and then it sees it as either agreeable or disagreeable. The reason why the mind sees it as agreeable is because of its craving. And the reason why it sees it as disagreeable is because of its craving. If it has a craving for something to happen a certain way, it will hold on to that, and it's going to experience pleasant feelings when it has agreeable contact. And when the mind is experiencing disagreeable contact through the sense spaces, it's going to get the painful feelings. So that's why the Buddha is teaching an individual to guard their doorways to the sense spaces, because you're going to be experiencing contact through these doorways. So say, for example, you were having an issue with maybe you're looking at handsome men or beautiful women, and all this sexual desire comes up in the mind whenever you see that. Well, if you're at the mall and you're walking in the mall and somebody pops out of a store in front of you and you're looking at their neck and their waist and their hips and their buttocks and things like this, and you're walking behind them, well, you've got to guard those doorways, right? You maybe duck off into a store yourself, or you head off to the bathroom, or maybe you look down towards the ground. You're guarding your doorways, not allowing your mind to continue to take in that contact, because it's just a rising central desire in the mind. So the Buddha is teaching you to guard your doorways, and you have these 6 doors: eyes, ears, the nose, the tongue, the body, and the mind itself. The mind can experience contact within the mind itself. So I think you guys maybe can understand contact through the eyes, ears, nose, tongue, and the body. Well, the mind in the present moment can be thinking about something in the past, either pleasurable or painful. And now you can be experiencing feelings in the present moment based on things that you're thinking about in the past. But there hasn't been any contact through the eyes, ears, nose, the tongue, or the body. That's why the mind is the 6th sense base. And the same thing can happen. The mind can be thinking about something in the future that it longs and yearns to occur, either pleasurable or painful. And now in the present moment, you can have pleasant or painful feelings, or neither painful nor pleasant feelings, by thinking about something in the future. So the mind is the 6th sense base, and you need to guard all of this. So that's what the Buddha is saying that you need to do next. Then he talks about eating and making sure that you just see food as something to nourish the body. That's what you need to be able to ultimately get to. You'll be able to enjoy your food, and you'll know that this food tastes great and it tastes good, but you can also eat any and all foods, right? That you're not just eating in order to please the tongue and please the mind, but you're doing it in order to nourish the body. And it's wise to make wise choices about the foods that you eat. But if there's certain foods that you find agreeable and you find certain foods to be disagreeable, you're going to need to get to the point where you don't have that anymore. that you just understand that you can eat any and all foods. And the way that you're going to need to be able to do that is the things that you get pleasant feelings from, you're going to need to distance yourself from those for a period of time. And the things that you have aversion to and you're pushing away, you're going to need to actually eat those kinds of foods in order to train your mind to overcome its craving. Then the Buddha is talking about being devoted to wakefulness, waking up, getting the mind to the point where it's awake and it's alert and it's crisp and it's clear, that the mind is actually getting towards enlightenment. Then the Buddha is talking about, encouraging mindfulness and developing mindfulness at all times of your day. He's talking about all these things that a monk would do, going forward, going back, looking forward, looking back, flexing your arms. These are just day-to-day activities that someone would be doing. But what he's basically saying in this entire paragraph is he's saying, have mindfulness all throughout your day, no matter what you're doing. Have mindfulness and have awareness. He's even talking about here when you're urinating and defecating, to make sure you're aware of the mind. From the moment you're first starting to wake up all day long and as you're going to sleep, have awareness of your mind, because your thoughts can invade you. As you're waking up in the morning, as you're going to sleep at night, your thoughts can invade you. And if you do nothing about that, your mind's complacent. So you would like to cut that off and let it go, not allow the mind to have that unwholesome thought. So it means that you're going to need to have this mindfulness or awareness of mind. Your meditation of breathing, mindfulness meditation, is helping you develop that, but you need to practice your mindfulness all day long. Then the Buddha talks about here, what is this? Make use of secluded resting places, right? That you don't just always sleep with other people. This is, his students would go out on their own, in the forest all by themselves. This trains the mind to be comfortable with being alone, because oftentimes people aren't comfortable with being alone. And if you're not comfortable being alone with your own thoughts and you don't enjoy that, who would ever enjoy spending time with you? So you need to learn how to enjoy spending time alone. And then people will enjoy spending time with you. So you can do this where you go on vacation by yourself, you go to the movies by yourself, you take yourself out to dinner alone. You can do all these kinds of things. Yes, you can go camping out in the woods by yourself alone too. That would be wonderful. But don't feel like that's something you have to do. But you do need to get to the point where you enjoy spending time alone. But you can also enjoy spending time with other people as well. That's what's going to help you overcome any kind of loneliness or boredom or things like that. And if you can enjoy spending time by yourself, then people can enjoy spending time with you. Ultimately, what the Buddha is getting to down here is he's talking about the 5 hindrances. If you've learned these with me, these are the 5 obstructions to your enlightenment: central desire, ill will, complacency, restlessness, and worry and doubt. And I've explored those with students in other classes. And you need to be able to eliminate those, because that's going to obstruct you from being able to get to enlightenment. And now the Buddha is talking about moving the mind into the jhanas, that an individual's mind will move into the jhanas. And then he's talking about getting to this higher training in this higher mind, and then getting to the peacefulness and joy. So let me know what questions you guys have here. You can put that into Facebook, YouTube, or Zoom, or you can raise your hand in Zoom and ask any questions that you like. So it looks like Vibhav has a question. Go ahead, sir.
Thank you, Teacher David. I had a question on the 5 hindrances and getting into the jhanas. It says that you have to abandon the 5 hindrances before you get into the first jhana.
Yeah, an individual will still have these fetters, right? Because it's not until you're in, because these are fetters also, that they will still have these in the mind all the way up until even the 3rd stage of enlightenment. Someone can still be complacent, but the mind needs to work towards abandoning these and reducing these significantly, but they're not completely eliminated by the time you get into the jhanas.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Okay, let me see if we have any other questions. Okay, I don't see any other questions anywhere. Oh, Kristen has a question. Go ahead, ma'am.
Thank you, teacher. He mentions here in the middle watch of night, you should lie down on the right side of a lion's pose with one foot overlapping the other. I wasn't sure exactly. He's saying you should do this, or, I don't know, is it just a way he's laying down?
This is the way that a Buddha oftentimes will lay, but you don't have to everyone doesn't have to lay that way in order to be able to get to enlightenment. He's just teaching a comfortable pose to lay in. And there's research that shows that if you lay on your right side, that it's actually better for your internal organs. So the Buddha must have been able to know this even 2,500 years ago. So that's why he's teaching that. But that doesn't mean you can't lay on your left side, you can't lay on your back or any of these other places. He's just describing this particular position. And I've seen scientific research that says lying on the right side is more helpful for the internal organs.
Okay, thank you, teacher.
Yep. And it looks like Judy has a question too. Go ahead, ma'am.
I do. Just two questions about this lion's pose. Is this the pose of the reclining Buddha that you see in the various temples?
Yeah, typically they don't always have his foot folded over, but he's typically lying on the right side.
Okay. And then I was under the impression that in yoga, when you're coming out of Shavasana and you roll to the right, is that also reflective of this pose that the Buddha did?
If that's what they're teaching you, yeah, if that's what they're teaching you, yeah, I don't know about yoga that as much as you guys probably do, but yeah, if that's what they're teaching you, that's what the Buddha's teaching is to be on the right side, because it's known today that it seems that scientists are saying it's better to lie on your right side, but again, that doesn't mean you can't lie on your left side too.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm. You're welcome. Okay. So let's go to our next chapter. Is there someone who would like to read this next chapter? This is chapter 26. It looks like Samantha. Go ahead, ma'am.
Simile of a young infant. Suppose a young infant boy, unwise, lying on his back, were to put a stick or pebble in his mouth because of his nurse's lack of attention. His nurse would quickly attend to him and try to take it out. If she could not quickly take it out, she would brace the boy's head with her left hand, and hooking a finger of her right hand, she would take it out even if she had to draw blood. For what reason? There would be some distress for the boy, this I don't deny, but the nurse has to do for his good and welfare out of compassion for him. However, when the boy has grown up and has enough sense, the nurse would be unconcerned about him, thinking, the boy can now look after himself. He won't be careless. So too, so long as a monk is still not accomplished in confidence in cultivating wholesome qualities, in a sense of moral wrongdoing in cultivating wholesome qualities, in moral concern in cultivating wholesome qualities, in energy in cultivating wholesome qualities, and in wisdom in cultivating wholesome qualities, I must still look after him. But when that monk is accomplished in confidence in cultivating wholesome qualities, in a sense of moral wrongdoing in cultivating wholesome qualities, in moral concern in cultivating wholesome qualities, in energy in cultivating wholesome qualities, and in wisdom in cultivating wholesome qualities, then I am unconcerned about him, thinking, the monk can now look after himself. He won't be careless.
All right. Thank you, Samantha. So this is a simile that I think many people can understand, because if there's a young infant child with something stuck in its mouth or in its throat, then, we would do everything we can to take that out. But then as it ages and it grows up and it has more wisdom, we would be unconcerned about that individual because they know not to put things in their mouth. So the Buddha is talking about that in terms of him as a teacher, that when a student first start learning with him, he's kind of overseeing them and kind of looking over them. But then as they develop their wisdom in their practice, he's not looking over them quite as much. And this is him just talking about him as a teacher. And he's talking about the confidence. He's talking about moral wrongdoing, moral concern. He's talking about energy and wisdom. These are 5 qualities that an individual needs to cultivate. The confidence that he's talking about here, whenever you see him talking about a confidence, it's confidence in the Buddha, the teachings, and the community. That's what's going to help you to be able to come closer and closer to the teachings, to be able to learn them, and then be able to build your wisdom. So that's what he's talking about with confidence. When he's talking about moral wrongdoing, what he's talking about here is that you need to have an understanding of what is wise and unwise based in the natural law of karma. That's what moral wrongdoing is cultivating that ability to know what is wise and unwise. What moral concern is once you understand what is wise and unwise, moral concern is to have the concern to not do things that are unwise, right? Because we can understand something that's wise or unwise, but then we could just plow through the world and who cares, right? We might have done that in the past, but the moral concern is like, I'm really not interested in causing these people any harm, right? So the moral wrongdoing is helping you to know what's wise and unwise. The moral concern is helping you to have the motivation to not actually cause somebody harm based in those unwise decisions. And one of the beings that you need to not be interested to cause harm to is yourself. Because anytime you put harm out to others, it all just comes back to you. That's the interesting thing about this, is that we don't see that in the unenlightened state, that we're just out there putting out harm and harm and harm and harm. It's almost like taking a knife and stabbing yourself with a knife, or it's like throwing sand in your face. So when we cause harm to other people, it's like throwing sand in your face because it's all going to blow right back. But with this moral concern, you're not interested in doing that. And you'll have seen that as part of the path that you'll be able to develop this. And then energy is having the initiative or the willingness, the vigor and vitality to be able to grow and develop on the path. You need to have that dedication, determination, diligence, because the mind can become complacent and lackluster and sluggish. I don't want to meditate. I don't want to pick up that book. I don't want to go to class. I'm not interested in doing that or that. The mind can just be, I don't want to do it, right? But so you're going to need to arise this dedication and determination. And then there's the wisdom, of course, that you need to cultivate the wisdom of the teachings through learning, reflecting, and practicing. So when a monk has these, or when a student has these things, the Buddha's like, okay, well, he won't be careless. He can look after himself. But before he has those kinds of things, or she has those kinds of things, the Buddha is equating this to a young infant child. So you would like to cultivate these qualities. That's where when you see a discourse like this, if you ever are a teacher, this can help you to understand how to be a good teacher, of course. But when you're seeing this, it's like, okay, well, the Buddha is praising these qualities of confidence, moral wrongdoing, moral concern, energy, and wisdom. Let me cultivate those things, because if the Buddha is praising those qualities, that means that's what leads to enlightenment. So let me cultivate those qualities. That's how you can use a discourse like this to your advantage. So let me know what questions you guys have here on this simile of a young infant, chapter 26. Okay, I don't see any questions anywhere. So let's go to chapter 27. Is there someone who would like to read that? Looks like Pat. Okay. Go ahead, Pat.
Filling in the perfectly enlightened one's teachings. Essie, you are well known to be a horse trainer. Just how do you guide a horse to be tamed? Venerable Sir, I guide one kind of horse gently, another kind sternly, and still another kind both gently and sternly. But Kessie, if a horse to be tamed by you won't submit to guidance by any of these methods, how do you deal with him? Venerable Sir, if a horse to be tamed by me won't submit to guidance by any of these methods, then I kill him. For what reason? So that there will be no disgrace to my teaching organization. But, Venerable Sir, the perfectly enlightened one is the unsurpassed trainer of persons to be tamed. Just how does the perfectly enlightened one guide a person to be tamed? I guide one kind of person gently, another kind sternly, and still another kind both gently and sternly. This, Kessie, is a gentle method. Such is bodily wholesome conduct, such the result of bodily wholesome conduct, such is verbal wholesome conduct, such the result of verbal wholesome conduct, such is mental wholesome conduct, such the result of mental wholesome conduct. Such are the heavenly beings, such are human beings. This is the stern method. Such is bodily misconduct, such the result of bodily misconduct. Such is verbal misconduct, such the result of verbal misconduct. Such is mental misconduct, such the result of mental misconduct. Such is hell, such the animal realm, such the realm of afflicted spirits. This is the gentle and stern method. Such is bodily wholesome conduct. Such the result of bodily wholesome conduct. Such is bodily misconduct. Such the result of bodily misconduct. Such is verbal wholesome conduct. Such the result of verbal wholesome conduct. Such is verbal misconduct. Such the result of verbal misconduct. Such is mental wholesome conduct. Such the result of mental wholesome conduct. Such is mental misconduct. Such the result of mental misconduct. Such are the heavenly beings. Such are human beings. Such is hell. Such the animal realm. Such the realm of afflicted spirits. But Venerable Sir, if a person to be tamed by you won't submit to guidance by any of these methods, how does the perfectly enlightened one deal with him? If a person to be tamed by me won't submit to guidance by any of these methods, then I kill him. But Venerable Sir, it isn't allowable for the perfectly enlightened one to destroy life, yet he says, then I kill him. It is true, Kessi, that it isn't allowable for the Tathagata to destroy life. However, when a person to be tamed won't submit to guidance by the gentle method, the stern method, or the method that is both gentle and stern, then the Tathagata thinks he should not be spoken to and instructed, and his wise fellow monks, too, think he should not be spoken to and instructed. For this, Kessi, is killing in the Noble One's teachings. The Tathagata thinks one should not be spoken to and instructed, and one's wise fellow monks, too, think one should not be spoken to and instructed. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Pat. So you might think that a Buddha is always talking a one particular way to his students, but that's not true because that would be permanence. A Buddha is going to need to talk in different ways to their students and see how they respond and how they would respond differently to each situation. So this person who's a horse trainer is helping the Buddha to see that he trains his horses gentle, that they train them with stern method, a gentle and stern method, and then they kill the horse if it doesn't do so well, right? So the Buddha's like, hey, I do the same things, right? As part of training the human being, that he has this gentle method, this stern method, and this both gentle and stern method. And then if the individual doesn't respond, he says he kills them. And killing them is to not speak to them. Because if you lived during the lifetime of a Buddha and you were learning from that individual, the teachings that they have to share with you are going to liberate your mind, is going to help you to escape out of the discontentedness and escape out of the cycle of rebirth. But if that person chose not to teach you any longer, it'd be the same as killing you, right? So that's why the Buddha is talking about it in this way, that he doesn't talk to that student. Because you might think that a Buddha would teach everybody and anybody. And the answer is that they're open to teaching everybody and anybody. But a Buddha also knows that they need to make wise decisions and practice discernment, that their time is limited. And a Buddha's interest is to make sure that their teachings reach as many people as possible and as many people get to enlightenment during their lifetime as possible. But if someone isn't responding to their guidance and their teaching, it's better for them to just go teach someone else who has a sincere interest in learning and practicing the teachings. If somebody isn't responding to the teachings, it's just like talking to a brick wall, and it doesn't make sense to continue to teach that person. So that's what the Buddha is choosing to do, is that he's just choosing not to teach that person. And he's referring to it as killing them. So let me know what questions you guys have here on this chapter, chapter 27. Okay, I don't see any questions. Let's go to chapter 28. Would somebody like to read chapter 28? Okay, Vibhav, go ahead, sir.
Thank you, Teacher David. The Tathagata is the one who shows the way. The Brahmin Ganaka Moggallana asked the perfectly enlightened one. When Master Gautama's disciples are thus advised and instructed by him, do they all attain Nibbana, enlightenment, the ultimate goal, or do some not attain it? When Brahmin, they are thus advised and instructed by me. Some of my disciples attain Nibbana, enlightenment, the ultimate goal, and some do not attain it. Master Gautama, since Nibbana exists and the path leading to Nibbana exists and Master Gautama is present as the guide, what is the cause and reason why When Master Gautama's disciples are thus advised and instructed by him, some of them attain Nibbana, the ultimate goal, and some do not attain it. After that, Brahmin, I will ask you a question in return. Answer it as you choose. What do you think, Brahmin? Are you familiar with the road leading to Rajagaha? Yes, Master Gautama, I am familiar with the road leading to Rajagaha. What do you think, Brahmin? Suppose a man came who wanted to go to Rajagaha, and he approached you and said, Venerable sir, I want to go to Rajagaha. Show me the road to Rajagaha. Then you told him, Now, good man, this road goes to Rajagaha. Follow it for a while and you will see a certain village. Go a little further and you will see a certain town. Go a little further and you will see Rajagaha with its lovely parks, groves, meadows and ponds. Then, having thus advised and instructed by you, he would take a wrong road and would go to the west. Then a second man who came who wanted to go to Rajagaha, and he approached you and said, Venerable sir, I want to go to Rajagaha. Then you told him, Now, good man, this road leads to Rajagaha. Follow it for a while and you will see a certain village. Go a little further and you will see a certain town. Go a little further and you will see Rajagaha with its lovely parks, groves, meadows and ponds. Then, having been thus advised and instructed by you, he would arrive safely in Rajagaha. Now, Brahmin, since Rajagaha exists and path leading to Rajagaha exists and you are present as the guide, what is the cause and reason why? When those men have thus been thus advised and instructed by you, one man takes a wrong road and goes to the west, and one arrives safely in Rajagaha. What can I do about that, Master Gautama? I'm one who shows the way. So too, Brahmin, Nibbana exists, and the path leading to Nibbana exists, and I am present as the guide. Yet, when my disciples have been thus advised and instructed by me, some of them attain Nibbana, the ultimate goal, and some do not attain it. What can I do about that, Brahmin? The Tathagata is the one who shows the way. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Vibhav. So you might think that anybody and everybody who studies with the Buddha would get to enlightenment. Well, that would be permanence. And we know that's not true. That there's going to be some people who get to enlightenment and some people who don't, even studying with a Buddha, right? So a Buddha is the one who shows the way, or a teacher is one who shows the way. They're pointing the way to enlightenment. They're essentially like a tour guide, but they can't guarantee that a student's going to make their way to enlightenment because, as this example shows, that they can easily make a wrong turn. So they can easily be learning the teachings that it takes from a Buddha to be able to get to enlightenment, but they're not actually understanding those teachings as clearly as a Buddha is teaching them, and they might not be implementing the teachings in the way that the Buddha is actually teaching them. So some people are going to get to enlightenment and some people aren't. So it's your own growth, your own development, your own decisions that are going to determine whether or not you get to enlightenment or not a teacher. A teacher can only show the way. So each individual practitioner is their own independent practitioner. You're journeying this road by yourself with the teacher holding the light to show you the path. But now you need to walk that path. So this is a great little simile here where the Buddha is helping this Brahmin to understand why some people get to enlightenment and some people don't. It's not that the instruction is any different. It's that the student might have taken a wrong turn. So each student needs to be diligent in their own practice and taking responsibility for their own growth and their own practice. Because somebody could be getting directions from somebody and just be like, and then they bolt off and they take a wrong turn. Where another individual could be getting directions from somebody and very clearly noting each individual direction, maybe even repeating it back to the person in order to make sure they've understood the directions. And now taking that different approach, they can more readily navigate their way to this town. And it's the same thing with the path to enlightenment. The student can just and just brush over things, and they're not going to be able to understand the teachings as well. Where a student can also take their time, ask questions, make sure they thoroughly understand, and now they're going to be more readily able to proceed forward on the path. So it's always the student's responsibility to learn and grow and develop, where the teacher is providing the guidance and pointing the way, including the Buddha. He's just pointing the way. He can't get you to enlightenment through his own decisions. All he can do is choose to teach. So let me know what questions you guys have here on this chapter. Okay, I don't see any questions anywhere. So we'll go to the next chapter, chapter 29. This is, did I skip one? I feel like I skipped one. No, I didn't, did I? Okay, we're on chapter 29, the simile of the great log. Would someone like to read this one? Okay, Yihang, go ahead, ma'am.
Thank you, Teacher David. The simile of the great log. Do you see, monks, that great log being carried along by the current of the river Ganges? Yes, venerable sir. If, monks, that log does not veer towards the near shore, does not veer towards the far shore, does not sink in midstream, does not get cast up on high ground, does not get caught by human beings, does not get caught by non-human beings, does not get caught in a whirlpool, and does not become inwardly rotten, it will slant, slope, and incline towards the ocean. For what reason? Because the current of the river Ganges slants, slopes, and inclines towards the ocean. So too, monks, if you do not veer towards the near shore, do not veer towards the far shore, do not sink in midstream, do not get cast up on high ground, do not get caught by human beings, do not get caught by non-human beings, do not get caught in a whirlpool, and do not become inwardly rotten. You will slant, slope, and incline towards Nibbana, enlightenment. For what reason? Because right view slants, slopes, and inclines towards Nibbana, enlightenment. When this was said, a certain monk asked the perfectly enlightened one, "What, venerable sir, is the near shore? What is the far shore? What is sinking in midstream? What is getting cast up on high ground? What is getting caught by human beings? What is getting caught by non-human beings? What is getting caught in a whirlpool? What is inward rottenness?" The near shore, monk. This is a designation for the 6 internal sense bases. The far shore. This is a designation for the 6 external sense bases. Sinking in midstream. This is a designation for excitement and desire. Getting cast up on high ground. This is a designation for the conceit, I am. And what, monk, is getting caught by human beings? Here someone lives in association with household practitioners. He rejoices with them and sorrows with them. He is happy when they are happy and sad when they are sad. And he involves himself in their affairs and duties. This is called getting caught by human beings. And what monk is getting caught by non-human beings? Here someone lives the holy life with the desire to be reborn into a certain order of heavenly beings, thinking by this virtue or vow or austerity or a holy life, I will become a heavenly being or one among the heavenly beings. This is called getting caught by non-human beings. Getting caught in a whirlpool, this, monk, is a designation for the 5 cores of sensual pleasures. And what, monk, is inward rottenness? Here someone is immoral, one of unwholesome character, of impure and suspect behavior, secretive in his acts, no aesthetic, though claiming to be one, not a celibate, though claiming to be one, inwardly rotten, corrupt, weak. This is called inward rottenness. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Yihang. So I think most of this is pretty self-explanatory, but I'm just going to focus in on maybe 1 or 2 things. Here, the Buddha is using this analogy of a log and how, it can get caught up and not make its way to the ocean, or how it could be able to get to the ocean. And he's relating that to your journey on the path to enlightenment. So right view is what he's starting out with, because that slants, slopes, and inclines towards Nibbana. You need right view just to get started. But then he's talking about all these other things like the 6 sense bases and excitement and desire and conceit. And he's using these really great analogy like getting cast up on high ground, because that's what conceit does, right? Is like an individual might think they're above other people, right? So he's using these really great analogies. But here, where he's talking about getting caught by human beings, this is something that oftentimes people think is actually a desirable quality, but you can see that it's not, is that he's talking about how when someone rejoices, they rejoice. When they sorrow, they're sorrowful. When they're happy, they're happy. When they're sad, they're sad, right? So this is like commiserating with other people. Like, just because your mom or dad or brothers or sisters or your friends or coworkers are upset or sorrowful doesn't mean you need to be sad and sorrowful. Sometimes people think that that's what it takes in order to understand someone's feelings. And that's not true. And sometimes people even teach that as empathy, as a desirable quality, that you understand someone's feelings and you share in their feelings. That is unwise. That is a conditioned feeling. That if someone else is happy, just because they're all bouncing off the walls, you're going to be bouncing off the walls. Or just because they're sad and miserable, you're going to be sad and miserable. This is like if someone's stuck in the quicksand, you're going to get down into the quicksand with them, right? That's unwise to do that. Instead, you would like to stand on stable ground. So the Buddha is teaching you not to allow your mind to experience conditioned feelings based on other people experiencing conditioned feelings. When we talk about empathy, people teach it as either understanding people's feelings and sharing in those feelings, which is not the type of empathy that's going to lead to enlightenment. But if you've heard of empathy taught as understanding people's feelings, that's the empathy that you would like to practice, that you understand people's feelings, but you don't have to share in their feelings in order to understand their feelings. In fact, by understanding the Four Noble Truths, you can deeply understand someone's feelings. When someone comes to me and they've had maybe someone close to them that has passed away and they're grieving and sorrowful, I fully understand that. They're having craving, desire, attachment. But I don't have to be sorrowful and sad in order to be able to talk to this person and understand them and then provide them the help that they need. In fact, if your mind is stable and steady, you'll be able to help this person more. Because by getting down into the quicksand with them, you can't help them to get out. Instead, you stand on stable ground. You reach out your hand. You say, grab my hand. Look me in the eyes. Grab my hand. You kick and I'm going to pull. Okay, you ready? I'm going to pull and now you kick. Right? And now you can actually help that person out of the quicksand, potentially. Of course, in order for them to get out of the sadness, they have to learn to cut that off and let it go and eliminate their craving, desire, attachment. But you understand the analogy that if you allow your mind to be happy or sad based on what people are doing around you, your mind's just going up and down with conditioned feelings based on other people. So you would like to protect your mind and not allow your mind to do that, because that would be getting caught up with human beings. So the Buddha goes through some other things here too, but I'll just see if you guys have any questions on anything that you saw here in this particular discourse, because it's a great little discourse to help you understand some of the things that could hang you up from getting to enlightenment. Remember, you can put this into Facebook, YouTube, or Zoom. Okay, I don't see any questions. So now we'll go to chapter 30. I saw somebody else had their hand up for this last chapter. I think it was Judy. Judy, if you'd like to read this next one, you're welcome to.
This. Am I still there? Hold on, I lost my picture. Okay. All right. The simile of the tortoise. Monks, in the past, a tortoise was searching for food along the bank of a river one evening. On that same evening, a jackal was also searching for food along the bank of that same river. When the tortoise saw the jackal in the distance searching for food, it drew its limbs and neck inside its shell and passed the time keeping still and silent. The jackal had also seen the tortoise in the distance searching for food, so he approached and waited close by, thinking, when this tortoise extends one or another of its limbs or its neck, I will grab it right on the spot, pull it out, and eat it. But because the tortoise did not extend any of its limbs or its neck, the jackal, failing to gain access to it, lost interest in it and departed. So too, monks, Mara, the evil one, is constantly and continually waiting close by you, thinking, perhaps I will gain access to him through the eye, or through the ear, or through the nose, or through the tongue, or through the body, or through the mind. Therefore, monks, reside guarding the doors of the six sense bases. Having seen a form with the eye, having heard a sound with the ear, having smelt an odor with the nose, having tasted a flavor with the tongue, having touched a physical object with the body, having recognized a mental object with the mind, do not grasp its signs and features. Since, if you leave the eye sense base unguarded, the ear sense base unguarded, the nose sense base unguarded, the tongue sense base unguarded, the body sense base unguarded, the mind sense base unguarded, evil, unwholesome states of craving and displeasure might invade you. Practice the way of its restraint. Guard the eye sense base, the ear sense base, the nose sense base, the tongue sense base, the body sense base, the mind sense base. Undertake the restraint of the eye, ears, of the eye sense base, the ear sense base, the nose sense base, the tongue sense base, the body sense base, and the mind sense base. When, monks, you reside guarding the doors of the 6 sense bases, Mara, the evil one, failing to gain access to you, will lose interest in you and depart, just as the jackal departed from the tortoise. Drawing in the mind's thoughts, as a tortoise draws in its limbs into its shell, independent, not harassing others, fully extinguished, a monk would not blame anyone.
All right. Thank you, ma'am. So a tortoise actually has 6 appendages that protrude out of the shell. You've got the 4 legs, you've got the head and the tail. So these 6 appendages that are coming out of the tortoise shell is an analogy for the 6 sense bases. And just like the turtle draws those in and then patiently sits there and waits while the jackal is off to the side, the Buddha is explaining to you, you can do the same thing with your 6 sense bases. You can draw those in. Because when you put your neck out, that's when, you're going to be longing, yearning through those sense bases, and that's where the discontentedness is going to invade your mind. So if you're longing, yearning through the eyes, ears, nose, tongue, the body, or the mind, this is where discontentedness can easily come into the mind. So the Buddha is teaching you to draw this in. And he's talking here about Mara, the evil one, which is a formless being that is interested in causing calamity and unwholesome things in the world. Some people might refer to this being as the devil or Satan or Lucifer. The Buddha refers to this being as Mara. This is actually a real being. It's a formless being. And this being is interested in tempting individuals into doing unwholesome things. And there's not only Mara, but there's beings working on Mara's behalf. These beings can't force you to do anything, but they can tempt you. And if you're going to be tempted, it's through your 6 sense bases that it's going to tempt you and show you things, or you'll experience things that might cause you to extend yourself out, and now you're going to experience discontentedness. So you'd like to draw that in, much like the turtle. So in your day-to-day life, you can think about that. If you guys have heard me talk about the coffee, that I was walking down the street and I smelt the coffee, my neck was way out there. I was smelling the coffee and right into the coffee shop, right? Where after that, I understood, hey, I need to draw in my limbs here, and I need to switch to the other side of the street. And now I need to look out for the coffee shops. And I needed to do that for about a 3 or 6 month period until I knew that the craving was gone. And now I can go into coffee shops. I can smell coffee all day long, and I'm not interested in drinking it. But during that period of time where the craving was sensitive, I needed to draw in the limbs so that I wouldn't be able to be enticed into a coffee shop to be able to drink coffee. So you're going to need to do this, that where you see your mind longing, yearning through these sense spaces, you're going to need to restrain the mind and pull it back. And if you use this analogy of the turtle and you just keep that in mind, if you've ever seen a turtle kind of draw its limbs in, this can help you in this period of time, because that's what you need to do with your sense spaces. So let me know what questions you guys have here. You can put that into Facebook, YouTube, or Zoom, or you can raise your hand in Zoom and ask any questions that you like. So Chris is saying, how exactly does Mara tempt? So Mara can do this through your mind. Mara can actually insert thoughts into your mind, but also Mara and beings working on Mara's behalf can actually tempt you as well. So I'll just give you one example of the tempting in day-to-day life. Is one time I had a student that came here to Chiang Mai, and they had a really good relationship at the time with their girlfriend. And they were coming here right after COVID. And the way the Thai government had this set up is you had to go down to Phuket, and it's an island, and you had to quarantine there for 2 weeks before you could go off anywhere else into Thailand. and this is how they kind of did it. I think this was like pre-vaccine, maybe, or maybe it was when vaccines were around. I can't remember. But nonetheless, while they were down there for 2 weeks hanging out before they could come up here to Chiang Mai, he was talking about how he walked down the street. There were all types of different women that were gawking at him and trying to pull him into, a place to be able to get a massage and probably other services too. And they were kind of, catcalling to him and stuff like that. And he asked me, like, what's going on here? And I said, well, this is Mara. This is beings working on Mara's behalf. You've got this really great relationship with your girlfriend, and now, you're potentially being tempted to come into this environment where now you would indulge in something unwholesome, and it would damage your relationship with your partner. And of course, it would damage your mind too. So Mara can put thoughts into your mind, or can experience things like this with beings working on Mara's behalf. But by the time you get to the jhanas, the Buddha describes how you've blindfolded Mara, because by that point you have cultivated enough wisdom that Mara understands that it can't tempt you any longer, that you understand you have a certain amount of moral wrongdoing and a certain amount of moral concern, that you're not going to make unwise decisions in that regard. So this being Mara is no longer attempting to tempt you. But there's still going to be plenty of sensual desires around at that time, right? You'll be walking down the street and smell that coffee. And that's not necessarily Mara, right? That's just an odor in the air that the nose got a whiff of. But Mara can specifically do things like this to be able to tempt you by inserting thoughts in your mind or other beings working on Mara's behalf. Okay. Helen, you're welcome. Pleased to help you. She says, great lessons. Thank you. All right. I don't see any other questions anywhere. So I'm going to end class by just thanking all of you guys for joining. Thank you for your interest in learning and practicing on the path. Thank you for reading. Thank you for your questions. Thank you for those of you guys who just participated and just are learning in our class, because as you're learning and growing and developing, it's helping you, it's helping those close to you, and all of humanity become a better and better place. So thank you for your dedication and commitment to learning and growing. Next week, we're going to be in the next 10 chapters. So you might decide to read those before or after class. Tomorrow in the group learning program, I'm going to be exploring the mental discipline section of the Eightfold Path. So if you're interested in getting a refresher on that, right effort, right mindfulness, and right concentration, I'm going to be doing that in the group learning program. And then on Wednesday, of course, I'm going to be teaching meditation. Actually, I'm sorry, this Wednesday, I'm not going to be teaching meditation. I'm going to be doing meditation with you. But then what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be teaching you about the Buddhist pilgrimage that I did in India and Nepal. I put together a presentation to be able to help you guys understand what a pilgrimage is and why somebody would be interested in doing this. And I've got lots of pictures from our group. So if you guys would like to tune in on Wednesday morning Thai time at 9 a.m. or Wednesday evening Thai time, for some of you guys that might be Tuesday evening and Wednesday morning. And if you can't attend live, remember there's a recording. So I'm going to share that with all of you guys so you guys understand what a pilgrimage tour is and why somebody would end up taking. And you'll get to see some of the pictures that we took on our tour. So I'm going to be doing that at the temple on Wednesday morning, and then I'll be doing it from home Wednesday evening. So you guys are welcome to tune in for that. And then you guys know we have our fun nights on Fridays at 6 p.m. and we have our Sunday meditations at the temple. We're now moving that into the classroom where we used to do it in the main hall. We're now going to be moving that into our classroom so that we can do our meditations from there instead of in the main hall. So whatever you guys decide to do today, have a very lovely and wonderful rest of your day. Perhaps we'll see you next time. Take care. Sawadee Kap. Thank you again for watching. Enjoy your meditation. Look forward to seeing you online and answering any questions that you might have. Thank you so much.